I don't think Star Wars has another story to tell.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same story over and over and over and over again.
Don't trigger me, Robert. There's a bunch of stories to tell.
I mean,
just because
no,
they're not telling them.
it's you could tell stories in that universe, but is that Star Wars? I mean, Star Wars is literally the story of Luke Skywalker dealing. It's a coming of age story, and it was over. The universe is really interesting, but we've had countless comic books and novels, and a lot of them have been quite good, but they're all variations on the same theme. Who cares?
And they've all been consistent since 1977 because Star Wars has never really taken a break. It's just changed its investment in how it produces content for its IP. There has not been a feature film Star Wars movie in over 5 years. To the general audience that doesn't subscribe to Disney Plus, Star Wars has taken that break.
And at the end, what are you going to do? You're going to tell another story about the Sith and the Jedi?
Yes.
Who cares? Who cares?
Everyone.
What
a
are
lot
they
of people. You can tell another Batman story. You can tell another Joker story.
Yeah, but
Stop it.
The difference is, here's the difference between a Batman story. Batman is a human being who lives on Earth.
So was Luke.
So was Luke Skywalker.
He's a farm boy.
I mean, he wasn't on Earth, but he was still a human being.
Luke Skywalker, they managed to ruin him. He was a classical character that would have existed in pop culture as Luke Skywalker forever until the sequel trilogy, where they completely ruined all of those mythical characters that no longer can live in our pop culture anymore the way they did at the end of Return of the Jedi.
Well, Mark Hamill helped ruin them too, but that's another conversation.
Yeah. But you know what you do, Rob? You go and you move forward. You find a writer that has the concept of what Star Wars is, all right, that believes in what George Lucas was doing, which is, like you just said, mythology, and you take it to
a story about the Sith and the Jedi. Who cares?
About light and dark, about heroes, the same fucking thing that we tell in all the. If you're tired of the skin of Star Wars, I would suggest to you that the same could be applied to any franchise right now. The same stories told through different frames.
No, because other franchises deal with stories about human nature. Star Wars is not a franchise that deals with.
You are talking about this. Put us big screen. Now we're fighting. You are talking about the 6 movies. Star Wars as an expanded universe definitely does deal with all of that. 100%.
Look, I get it. I understand. But really, all stories that are being told are about us. They're about the audience. What do we learn about being human beings from the stories that we're consuming? And
guys, don't fight.
No, but I understand.
Versus.
The thing about Star Wars is Star Wars fans love what Star Wars could be and what it was in the expanded universe and the books and the comics and all that. But the media of Star Wars, most of it has been disappointing.
Almost all of it. But I'm saying we could. That doesn't mean it's not rife with chances to do it the right way.
What is the right way? How many more decades are we going to live? We're waiting for Jesus to come back. And
you're right. And we should also stop doing Star Trek because they've ruined that. They've ruined also no more Star. But the point is, fuck that. Don't let them win.
But
we
the
can
thing
do
is,
a Kyle
it's not about winning.
Revan.
Give us something new. The point is, there's so much new to be like Denis Villeneuve's adaptation of Dune. The thing about Star Wars, I guess the show is Versus. The thing about Star Wars is it had its chance. It sometimes things come and go, fall out of favor. Star Wars is a franchise that we are all hoping will get to be great one day, and it was great for 2 movies. 2 movies. Star Wars and Empire. Return of the Jedi was a disappointment. And I'll tell you something. I was there at ground zero. There are 2 great Star Wars movies. That's it. Everything else is
what kind of Star Wars fan are you? And so there you go.
I'm a huge Star Wars fan.
This is like J.J. Abrams, who says he's a Star Wars fan and he likes 1.5 Star Wars movie. Rob, you're a Star Wars fan and you like 2 of them. Stop.
Yeah, because
there
they were
6
great.
Star Wars movies. I call them all. Love all of them for different reasons.
Back 26 times in the theater, and you know what? Nothing has ever been as good as Empire. Nothing. I've been waiting for a better Star Wars movie since 1980. 16 years old, Return of the Jedi remains the single most disappointing time I've ever had in a movie theater in my entire life. It was a film that was a rehash. It was stupid. The only thing good about that movie is the conflict at the end with the Empire, with the Emperor, Luke, and I'll tell you something. Anyone who saw Return of the Jedi when it opened in 83 and saw the little Snow White version of the Emperor walk down that ramp was like, wait a minute, where's the Clive Revel Emperor who's terrifying? Yes,
So, Bobby, according to you, we should have just stopped at Star Wars at Empire Strikes Back. That was the height.
No, we should have made
no
Return of the Jedi. We should have made, if George Lucas didn't have such a horrible time on Empire Strikes Back because he almost lost his company and lost his merchandising rights to 20th Century Fox, and he had to come back and decide, no, these movies are really for kids. And
he's
everything
pretty consistent with that. At the beginning of this argument, what triggered me is you said there's no more story to tell in Star Wars, and I emphatically disagree with every part of that statement.
Can you guys share my screen real quick? I want to show something. This was George Lucas, if you guys don't mind. This is George Lucas talking to Warwick. You guys have probably seen this. This is what Star Wars needs to be. It's like you just said, Star Wars is for 12-year-olds, okay? I want to play this clip. Just listen to what George Lucas and how he describes this, and think about how much of this is missing in today's storytelling.
Designed to be a film like mythology of this is what we stand for. You're about to enter the real world. You're 12 years old. You're going to go on into the big world. You're moving away from your parents being the center focus. You're probably scared. You don't know what's going to happen. And here's a little idea of some of the things you should pay attention to. You know, friendships, honesty, and trust, and doing the right thing, living on the light side, avoiding the dark side. Those are things that it was meant to do. And obviously, the real thrill was when I see some of those little things, but I see the fans, and we, when we were in Spain shooting.
And then he goes on and on, but that's, in my opinion, that's what Star Wars was. That's what Star Wars can still be, teaching those lessons. It was a mythology for the new generation. Everything you just heard George talk about is what's missing right now. When you talk about friendships, honesty, trust, believing in yourself, all that kind of stuff that he was talking about just in that little clip, that's what Star Wars is. And I feel like those stories can still be told within the Star Wars galaxy. You just need people that care about that stuff to tell those stories. And until you get people that care about that stuff and not about, oh, I'm black, I'm a woman, I'm a, LGBTQ, until you get those people out and start bringing those people in that care about real life lessons, because remember, mythology is all about teaching the next generation what's important to them and setting up these mythologies. I feel like that's what Star Wars had to offer. At least that's what it gave me. Okay. It made me believe. And I feel like that's the problem, is that we don't have that in Star Wars right now. And that's the reason why Star Wars is failing.
There's also the idea that Star Wars is a product of its time. Star Wars is an almost 50-year-old franchise. And the time that Star Wars came out, the post-Vietnam era, where things were going, adding in an escapist element to Hollywood at the time, when Hollywood was relentlessly, it was the era of Taxi Driver, of Midnight Cowboy, of Network, of All the President's Men, Clute, The Parallax View, whatever. And that's the environment that Star Wars came out in. I would posit that there's nobody alive right now who can make a good Star Wars movie with the current ownership of the franchise. Because the current ownership of the franchise is directly in opposition of a storyteller coming along and doing exactly what Lucas is asking you to do.
No argument there, by the way. So what I'm saying would be done under an ideal circumstance of them actually caring and letting someone who cared about it have free reign. Don't you think
with all the expanded universe stuff, look, I read all the Dark Horse comics. I read a lot of the Star Wars novels.
Oh, you gave me some Disney Star Wars shit. What do you know about Kyle Katarn? What do you know about the old school between the 90s and early 2010s stuff? It's 20 years of
You're asking me what I know about Shadows of the Empire?
Revan, sure, Dash Rendar, all of that could be done right now to be $1 billion film. It would be about friendship and betrayal and light and dark. And
I agree, but it's already been done.
I
read those stories.
That's great. Have you seen it in live action? Who played Dash Rendar?
So what you're going to ask to go back and do is go back to readapt these books that had their place,
or find storytellers that can move forward. You don't necessarily need to adapt what has been done. There's got to be storytellers out there that can do this. I know there are. There are still great storytellers.
They've already wrecked. Grand Admiral Thrawn was the coolest new Star Wars character created.
That's why you got to go 200 years away.
And they've ruined.
He sold out and took the check, and he ruined his own character. By someone in the comments, I'm turning you into a gatekeeper.
Sell out. He was not given a choice.
You're goddamn right. I'm a gatekeeper now. We should have gate kept. We should have gate kept. We were a mistake.
Gatekeep, though?
Huh?
How do you?
I'm sorry to derail the show. I just wanted to
on the
put that
open
out.
market.
No, it's great. Thank you, DA. Thank you, Derek.
Just throwing a question out. How do you gatekeep something that is available on the open market for anyone to buy?
Oh, I think when they call me a gatekeeper, they just mean you have strong opinions and you're not open to anyone that wants to change it. And that's fine. Yeah, we should have had more gatekeeping. We should have kept the shit out of everything. And they've all been ruined now.
But with that mentality, you would never have had the expanded universe because people said it's not the movies. You can't have that. We don't want that. Get it out.
Not the type of gatekeeping.
Well, but that was still at a
don't make me fight you too.
But that was still at a time. I mean, that was the prequel era when, you had people that everybody that wrote Star Wars novels and everybody that wrote the comics for Dark Horse loved Star Wars. They loved Star Wars. And just like the people that would write the thousands of Star Trek novels, they started writing Star Trek novels because they loved the universe. Not only did they love the universe and the characters, they were students of the minutia. And they were like, okay, no one's ever filled in the blanks between A, B, C, and D. But if A, B, C, and D are true in the Star Wars universe, maybe this would be true. And then they would write what E, F, G, H were. And it was like, wow, that's really cool. Some of the role playing, the stuff in the early Star Wars role playing game, did some wonderful filling in of the gaps in the Star Wars universe. There's so much there, and it was already done well. It's all there. It was done, and that's what Disney should have done. They had it laid out for them. Yeah. And no, do they do Heir to the Empire? No. We get Grand Admiral Thrawn brought to life in animation, and then in this weird watered down version of what the character was as written by the original author. Why didn't they just go back and adapt those books? They adapt books for other movies. They'll adapt a Tom Clancy novel and make it Hunt for Red October. Why don't they go back and take the best of the novels and adapt those?
And I'll say, Rob, I agree with you. It's because we grew up in the same era. So I remember being disappointed with Return of the Jedi. It wasn't like a disaster.
No,
I'd say it's a third or half of a good film. I like the throne room stuff at the end. The Ewoks are stupid. Whatever. We can go on and on. We can.
If they destroyed one Death Star, why is another Death Star a threat?
I don't like this retread on the Death Star. Would have preferred, the home Coruscant. We, would have preferred all of that, but or just something different. So I'm with you. There are two amazing Star Wars movies, and everything else is kind of.
But there's also one more thing to consider. When Star Wars was coming out, the Lord of the Rings books were also very popular. You had Ralph Bakshi's animated Lord of the Rings. Yeah. You had The Hobbit was on TV. So the idea of a fantasy trilogy was, in people's minds, and I could write an article about this, and I can't support this, but everybody wanted Return of the Jedi to be Return of the King. They wanted that level. I did. I had already read all three Lord of the Rings books, and I'm thinking it's got to be Return of the King, right? We're going to get something new. We're going to get the White City. We're going to get, Coruscant should have been the climax of Jedi.
Yep.
The Emperor should have been on Coruscant, and that's where it all should have ended.
Being deposed by the rebels who said, we are taking this planet back for the freedom of the galaxy, and there you go.
That's what I expected, a Return of the King style film. And that was what it was sold as. And when you see it, if you look at Return of the Jedi, the Star Wars movies were building Empire. Return of the Jedi is a small movie. And the fact that it all ends in a throne room, admittedly, great, with three guys in a room, but it wasn't what we were promised. And when I was 16 years old, when Jedi was coming out, Star Wars came out when I was 10. I was 13 when I saw Empire. I was right where George Lucas was talking. And I was waiting to see. I wanted to have my mind blown. And Return of the Jedi was one disappointment after another.
How old were you at Return of the Jedi?
16.
Okay. I was 13. I was 8 when I saw the first Return of the Jedi. I was 13 at the Phantom Menace. So I was actually the exact age for all of them. And I like all of them. I did not have any of the. So there's my generation of Star Wars that likes all of it, grew up on all the 90s and early 2000s expanded universe and likes all of it right up until Disney took it over and erased it. We're the ones saying, no. billions. If you guys didn't like those movies, that's great. We love all 6. We want to preserve that in the expanded universe, and it's rife. That's what Star Wars
here's
series
the problem. Here, okay, I would posit this. I can understand liking the first movies, but the prequel trilogy, but you have to understand, for another generation of people, they were incredibly disappointing. And that was where people were like, oh, Star Wars was over. We all went and saw Phantom Menace. You know, I walked out of the theater I was shaking my head, wondering.
Yeah,
I mean,
my parents were disappointed.
Phantom Menace opens with 2 guys going into a room at a meeting and waiting for somebody to come see them. They're literally sitting at a table drinking water.
But do you understand the resentment that people that do like it and have been spending money and time and energy on this all these years? And while you guys all say it's dead, let it die, we say, fuck you, keep it alive. And we're willing to do the work. Do you understand the resentment between those two things?
Rob, do you remember this article?
I do, but the thing is, those movies are demonstrably not good. And the thing is, I understand people liking them when they were kids, but when we were kids, there were the things that we were being influenced by, even our cartoons, our animation, whether it was Looney Tunes or Johnny Quest or whatever. There was a certain level of the entertainment that we were getting. When we saw Phantom Menace, it had been so those movies aren't even populated with real people. The words that come out of people's mouths don't even sound genuine. And when you watch that, you're thinking to yourself, who made these? The person
Harrison Ford's quoting is, you can write this shit, but you can't say, okay, stop. This is revisionist. All the movies have their problems. You either like them or you don't. I get it.
It's not revisionist because you weren't there when the original movies came out. So you didn't see the development of what was going on.
I can see Harrison talking about the silly dialogue that you just criticized, acting like it doesn't exist in all the movies.
It wasn't silly dialogue. He can say it, but those movies became classic for a reason. When Harrison Ford says, I don't know, do you think a princess and a guy like me? No. That was great dialogue. That's because people don't pull their that's because droids don't pull people's arms out of their sockets when they lose. Wookiees have been known to do that. There's nothing like that in the prequel trilogies. Star Wars this idea that it has bad dialogue, Death Mark's not an easy thing to live with, Solo. You can go through both of the first 2 Star Wars movies and all the dialogue works. All of it. It's all cool. It's all world building. We hinged on every word that came out of people's mouths, wondering, what does that mean?
And not only that, it was a more serious tone. And when Gary Kurtz exited, was not involved in the 3rd movie, you noticed he was setting up things that were deeper in there, made it more serious. And George's ideas were balanced by Gary and his wife, Marcia.
Yep.
And both of those relationships were fractured and went south on Jedi. And here is an article from filmthreat.com, reprinted on filmthreat.com, written by Dan Weber, from the 90s. And this was originally published in Sci-Fi Universe magazine.
It was the cover story.
It was the cover story. I created that magazine with Mark Altman. I
was a critic at large for it.
Rob was a critic at large, wrote many stories. It was kind of like Film Threat, but only about sci-fi. This article, 50 Reasons Why Return of the Jedi Sucks. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but if you start to look at these, number 1, Ewoks. Number 2, the tone is inconsistent. Number 3, the look is all wrong. I would say the 3rd film, The Return of the Jedi, kind of feels like a TV movie compared to the cinematography of the first 2. Number 4, it's a bunch of Muppets. Number 5, painful lack of innovation. Number 6, witty banter. 7, physical comedy. I could go on and on. I'll put a link in the description for this video. But look, it's something. And Rob, I remember feeling disappointed. I still went and saw it like 7 times that summer, but always with this should have been more serious. It should have been bigger.
It should have been apocalyptic. You have this was the confrontation between the Jedi and the Sith that had been building over. Look, Badger, I don't mean to get on your case. I'm not angry about it.
Oh, and I'm not angry. I don't mean to get on you.
But it's just like I saw Empire 26 times in the theater. I cannot tell you what that movie meant to me when I saw it, because the promise that was made to me with Star Wars to become a fan changed my life when I was 10. And to sit in the theater, and it was right on the cusp of, you know, I was becoming a man. It opened the same week as my bar mitzvah. So I was, I'd studied Hebrew. I was going to have my bar mitzvah, and Empire Strikes Back opened, and Empire Strikes Back was a gateway to the adult world that I was going into. And I expected to follow that up. When I was 16, I just learned how to drive, just got my license literally the week before Jedi opened. And I was hoping that I was expecting a life-changing event. And it was not that. And I didn't understand. I had to come to grips with, how can these two movies that for literally, I had lived on Earth for 16 years. And from the time I was 10 to the time I was 16, which was a great percentage, was a 33 something percent of my life, a little bit more than that, Star Wars was a part of it. And when I saw Jedi, it was the most deflating, most disappointing experience, because it showed me that the promise of Empire moving into this larger, you've taken your first step into a larger world. Well, apparently not, because it's going to end on the moon of Endor with a bunch of Ewoks, and I have to deal with another Death Star being blown up. Good for me. It was really disappointing. And it was really existentially disappointing.
I got the catharsis of having dozens of books, games, and novels showing Luke become a Jedi Master and build the Jedi Order and all the characters that come along with that. So what you just described is what I got during Force Awakens Last Jedi.
Well, we didn't have that stuff when we were watching Star Wars.
Understand? That's what I'm saying. We have two very different experiences, which is why I'm defending it and don't want it to let it go. Because I did have those experiences. I'm not apathetic about it yet.
No, I mean, we had Splinter of the Mind's Eye, which was the first book, and then you had the Han Solo trilogy, and then you had the Lando Calrissian and the Mind Harp of Sharu, and then we had the Marvel comics. So we did have an experience of gaps being filled in, and it was all that, but still, that was waiting for the next movie to come out. And then when Jedi went down, and I understand. Look, I have been a fan of Star Wars. It's not like I didn't read all this stuff. I've been a complete fanatic. I mean, I'm still building a 4-foot model of the Millennium Falcon right here in this room. Phantom sends me more parts. But I mean, it's like, look, I'm always I built, here's a 1/72 scale, or was 1/72 scale model the Millennium Falcon I built. I mean, it's what can I say? Star Wars has been a part of my life, but modern Star Wars, not so much.